Everyone loves that classic trope of the goofy protagonist who's actually hiding a dark past and insanely overpowered abilities. Just think back to the shock of growing up watching Rurouni Kenshin and discovering that this peaceful wanderer was actually the most feared manslayer in the country. This contrast always hits the mark because it has us laughing 1 minute and holding our breath the next during mind-blowing action scenes. But what if I told you there's a show that took this exact same formula and decided to throw it all into a blender of pure insanity? That's exactly where the phenomenon we're breaking down today comes in. Scissor 7. Picture this: an amnesiac assassin moonlighting as a washed-up hairdresser who fights using a pair of telekinetic scissors and takes orders from a mobster chicken. Sounds like absolutely chaotic nonsense, right? But the catch is that beneath all this unhinged comedy, there's genuine, heartfelt emotion. What kicks off with dumb jokes and terrible disguises quickly evolves into a deep story about redemption, spectacular fights, and a daily struggle to keep from turning back into a monster. So today on the channel, Scissor 7, a ridiculous comedy, hiding the best action out there right now.
What do you do for a living?
I do farming.
What kind of farming?
Or farming?
The Super Scissors of Chicken Island!
We meet our deadbeat protagonist who makes a meager living playing with his meat at a food stall using low-budget telekinesis. When his boss, a mob-styled chicken named Daibo, realizes the business is a bust, he suggests Seven enter the assassination trade to scrape together 100,000 soul pieces. The goal? A trip to Stan, a high-tech paradise where Seven might finally recover his lost memories. To ensure he doesn't die on day one, the bird gifts him a mystic disguise egg and an emergency flying chicken named Xiao Fei. Since Seven couldn't kill a worm without crying, his boss schedules a rookie job for $500, crash a wedding, and cut off the bride's hair. At the party, the idiot gets all choked up watching the couple's montage, realizing he has no memories and is just as lonely and pathetic as you are. Completely disoriented by his own loser feelings, he accidentally shaves the groom's head instead of the bride's.
Oh, sorry, wrong one.
He's forced to flee the scene while a mob of furious guests tries to lynch him. During his humiliating retreat, he bumps into a Stan robot and naively asks if the memory tech is real. The robot is friendly enough until it spots the Shadow Assassin badge, instantly triggering extermination mode. Turns out, anyone with that badge is a sworn enemy of the state. Seven manages to rip an arm off the machine, but before he gets vaporized, a masked female assassin appears out of nowhere and decapitates the scrap metal. She demands to know why a low-tier loser is carrying a league badge, but the robot triggers its self-destruct, giving Seven a chance to escape with his pet chicken. Back at the coop, Daibo warns that to get the league's attention, Seven needs to break into the world's top 100 rankings. To cover their tracks, they open a bargain bin hair salon as a front for the worst assassin duo ever documented. The feline leader, Meow Kitty, decides it's time to wipe out the island's dogs and hires Seven to gouge out the rival leader's eyes in an act of pure sadism. Showing off his incredible infiltration skills, our assassin smashes an egg and transforms into a stray dog. The disguise works too well. He ends up getting trampled repeatedly by a pack of thirsty hounds chasing frisbees and chew toys, forcing him to walk like a crab with severe spinal issues just to survive the stampede. Upon reaching the boss's office, he tries to impersonate a leader named Mad Bark and starts singing, which only gets him choked out by the real boss. To prove he's a legitimate canine, a guard suggests the ultimate purity test, devouring a fresh, steaming pile of brown clay. Using his reverse psychology, Seven tricks the guard into eating it first. The dumb dog gulps it down without a second thought, so Seven smashes the rest of the filth into the beast's face and reverts to human form. The battle begins. Seven tries to pierce the dog's eyes with his scissors, but misses miserably, only breaking the boss's sunglasses. As punishment for his audacity, the canine leader decides to crush Seven's toes. Our hero retaliates with a desperation move. He licks the enemy's eyeball with a powerful tongue thrust. Grossed out and furious, the boss pulls out an electric guitar and starts bludgeoning Seven with physical musical riffs until the poor guy goes insane. Suddenly, Seven's eyes glow red, a buried memory surfacing, and in a surge of psychopathic aggression, he destroys the instrument with his bare hands and scissors. Before the fatal blow, the dog notices a photo that only Meow Kitty had and breaks down in tears. He reveals they had a steamy, forbidden romance in the past, but he had to leave her because genetically, their species could never mix fluids and reproduce. Shocked by this cheap animal drama, Seven turns into a floor tile and vanishes. Instead of completing the contract, he returns disguised as the dog, plays a melancholy tune on the guitar to confess the truth to the cat, and ends the mission hugging the client in a pool of furry tears. The tearful piece of the zoo is interrupted when the same masked assassin from the robot incident reappears. She is the Lethal 13, ranked number 37 in the world. Ignoring Seven, who is still dressed as a dog, she declares she's only there to exterminate the stray and wipes the floor with the cat gang in seconds. Realizing the heat is on, Seven flees and sheds his pathetic disguise, but the homicidal specialist refuses to buy his act and moves in to cleave him in two. In a masterstroke of military evasion, Seven screams that he's gone invisible and turns into a cobblestone. The impeccable plan almost works until a dog walks by and decides to empty its bladder right on him. Seven slaps the dog's butt to defend himself, blowing his cover and getting stomped by 13. He gets his revenge a millisecond later by turning into a split-open durian fruit, forcing the girl to slam her bare foot into the exotic fruit's sharp spikes. A lethal circus of sword versus scissors ensues until Seven uses a cheap trick to distract her and snip her mask off. Totally mesmerized by her angelic features, he decides to hit on her mid-assassination attempt, earning a painful kick to the face in return. For his romantic follow-up, he hurls his flying chicken at her face and tries to take to the skies. However, 13 is faster, firing poison plum blossom darts that knock both man and bird out of the sky. Enraged by the toxins in his veins, the useless barber enters a frenzy, splitting his scissors into twin blades for a dual attack. 13 pins his wrists and prepares to pierce his chest with a hidden blade at the end of her long ponytail. Facing certain death, Seven pulls her soft body against his and violently plants a forced, disgusting kiss on her lips. His payment? A steel-toed boot to the groin. Yet the idiot keeps smiling through the foam and pain, convinced his move was genius. Exuding pure destructive energy, 13 goes in for the kill, but the emergency chicken suddenly swallows a mountain of invisible steroids, growing swole bodybuilder muscles and shattering her blade with his bare hands. Shaken by the island's bizarre surprises and seeing the cat gang return as backup, 13 uses a special whistle to summon a massive bird and escapes, swearing bloody vengeance while our pathetic idiot lies on the ground crying out for a second date. The local tyrant of purity, Chairperson Jiang, storms the salon and shoves a photo in Seven's face. Thinking the old lady wants a makeover, he cuts her hair to match the man in the photo. Livid and rocking a hideous bowl cut, the hag clarifies the goal was to assassinate the man in the picture, threatening to demolish the shop if he fails. Ready to kill, Seven turns into a lamppost outside a lingerie shop to spy, but trips like a clumsy oaf. To avoid being caught by the target, the legendary underpants man, Seven's only logical move is to transform into a pair of sexy schoolgirl panties. Delighted by the immaculate find, the creep stuffs Seven into his bag, takes him home, and hangs him on his trophy wall of stolen intimates. When the pervert turns his back, Seven pulls a knife for the kill, but gets buried under a random rock the panty master throws backward. Before the guy can wear Seven on his sweaty body, the island's purity patrol kicks down the door. Underpants man begs to keep his collection, but the merciless Jiang tosses a torch to incinerate his fetish paradise. That's when Seven reverts to human form, slices the torch in half, cuts the old lady's hat off to reveal her bald spot, and unleashes his yellow liquid of justice, P, to douse the flames. He tries to argue that the guy's fetish doesn't hurt anyone, just like your own incognito browser tabs, but the purity patrol hags spin fast enough to hypnotize our hero before slamming him against a wall and beating him senseless. Seeing the old lady raise a lethal iron bar to destroy the underwear for good, Seven enters rage mode, shredding the zealot's glasses and skirt hems. Jiang's forehead vein throbs as she invokes the lethal pure maiden palm, pummeling the assassin in a humiliating combo. He desperately counters with the bizarre serpent's wings technique, dropping his own pants in a visually repulsive tactic that makes the prudes flee in disgust. With perverted peace restored, the target thanks Seven for treating him like a human being, only to find Seven wearing red panties on his head, asking if he looks elegant. Far from that madhouse, the greedy mob chicken corners a business monkey on the sidewalk, threatening the creature in public just to extort its necktie. Granny Chen runs a sidewalk crime empire selling overpriced oranges. Whenever some sucker weighs an orange and complains it's too heavy, she demands the price of a kidney and throws herself on the ground, faking multiple fractures until the crowd pressures the poor guy into buying the whole stock. Witnessing this commercial atrocity, Seven follows the old lady disguised as a cardboard box, but her radar is flawless. She finds the empty box and stomps our hero into the asphalt. While she goes to pick up her grandson from school, Seven prepares to slice her throat from inside the bag. However, a stray dog she teased earlier catches Seven's scent and bites down directly on his confidential documents. After a pathetic tug of war between the dog's gums and the old lady, Seven reverts, screaming in pain, and kicks the dog away. While he checks if his precious jewels are still in place, the diabolical granny pulls out a hairpin and stabs him deep in the arm. When he naively asks for a bandage, she drives the rusty weapon into his other limb. With 2 holes leaking red like a punctured hose, Seven tries to telekinetically fly his scissors into her spine. The old lady simply drags Seven's debilitated body into the line of fire as a human shield, making the idiot stab himself in the chest. Crawling in the gutter, he takes a final glorious stab to the buttocks for good measure.
I wanna go home.
Pay up now, or I'll stab your asshole.
The school bell saves his life temporarily, but things go south when the granny asks who ruined her grandson's hair, and the kid points straight at Seven. Seven suddenly realizes the old lady's own son ordered the hit to collect her fat life insurance payout. In a disturbing vision, the matriarch rips off her normal clothes to reveal a skin-tight BDSM leather suit and lashes the boy with a whip, cracking the pavement to the cheers of a depraved crowd that loves free adult humiliation. Watching from afar, our loan shark bird decides to prove with a loaded crossbow that love is a useless human weakness, firing bolts at the defenseless grandson. The dominatrix granny throws herself in front of the kid, but Seven spins his magic scissors, shredding the arrows mid-air. He saves the insufferable old lady from the mechanical cruelty ordered by her own mercenary son, all while wondering why humanity bothers with such pathetic bonds. Our merciful assassin prepares to finally commit an easy murder at the docks against a helpless little girl named Cola. But the moment he thinks about acting, the brat jumps on his back, laughing at the danger and activating her convenient biological ability to paralyze anyone she touches. Trapped as a hostage babysitter, Seven accepts the humiliation of a pinky swear to fulfill every useless item on her bucket list before her inevitable execution. The juvenile delinquent tour starts with chugging a giant bottle of soda in one go, followed by making the assassin pee standing up while his bladder is bursting, and forcing him to run naked through the streets while she records the whole thing for social media. They then hunt down a nurse at the hospital and jab her with a monster syringe, only for the nurse to retaliate by planting 30 surgical needles into Seven's spine like a pincushion. Ignoring the pain, they dine and dash at a 5-star restaurant and then try to kick her jerk ex-boyfriend in the groin. The X counters, and the vengeful leg lands squarely on our puppet assassin's crotch. Deciding to push sanity to the limit, Seven swallows a rare alien capsule and transforms into a pompous lion king, letting the girl ride on his back. The delusion falls apart when they run into a real alpha lion that lunges for Seven's jugular. The final straw is a request for an atmospheric freefall. Our swole chicken hijacks the duo to the edge of space and drops them into the vacuum for a date with the asphalt. Using his brilliant camo magic, Seven shapes their bodies into a giant paper airplane. Exhausted, the girl finally confesses. Her bucket list was because her aggressive cancer and chemo had left her with only a few strands of hair. She was the anonymous client who used her piggy bank savings to order her own hit. Smitten by his usual nauseating empathy, our fake mercenary abandons the contract and dumps the responsibility of a miracle into the hands of the island's insane Dr. Miracle. Our bankrupt mercenary and his bird boss are reduced to selling coconuts on the beach to pay for their constant failures. But glory calls when Uncle Chen hires Seven to infiltrate a giant submarine and assassinate the captain for $88 and a sad tin of biscuits. Lacking diving gear, our genius uses a magic egg to turn into a fish, only to realize he's drowning in his own habitat.
I can't swim. Help! Save me!
Oh, a drowning fish! I should be able to catch it.
The act works well enough that the Navy goons fish him out and start a violent culinary debate about boiling versus roasting him, bouncing his face off the deck like a flat basketball. The emo big boss, Captain Jack, demands high-quality sashimi and tries to slice Seven, who dodges before spitting a toothpick at the target's face. The pirate vacuums the toothpick out of the air and beats Seven senseless, forcing him back into his flabby human form. Seven takes a beating, but the vibe shifts when his hair tie snaps. Jack nearly suffers a heart attack, recognizing our resident loser as the same demon who left a massive scar on his chest years ago, demanding to know the reason for the military invasion so he can get back to the beach and rub oil on sunbathers. Seven tries to punch the armored glass and fails hilariously. Bored by the cringe, Jack proposes a deal. He'll leave if Seven can move him just 1 inch. Seven reaches for the most lethal weapon in his cognitive arsenal. He contorts his face into a grimace so hideously grotesque that the captain recoils in pure disgust. True to his word, Jack bails, claiming he was only there to fix his GPS, leaving Seven to collect his tiny pile of coins to buy back Uncle Chen's sold pants. While practicing his favorite sport, voyeurism disguised as a coconut, Seven gets chewed out by Daibo and told to focus on the real target, a buff, adulterous bodyguard. But 2 drunk tourists decide to smash the coconut, forcing Seven to revert and get beaten up by the drunks. He tries again as a sea louse, only to be kicked off the pier like trash. Refusing to lose, he turns into a rubber ducky, nearly gets chewed up by the bodyguard, gets tossed back into the ocean, and is immediately swallowed by a giant hungry fish. Surviving the gastric juices, he resurfaces to face Dachan. His remote control scissors are promptly eaten by the same fish again. When Dachan pulls out an ignorant handgun, Seven appeals to his fragile masculinity and challenges him to Hollywood-style combat, trading clean punches to the face until someone drops. Small detail, Dachan is a reinforced steel fridge, while Seven has the physique of milk pudding. It's a one-sided slaughter. The next day, Seven tries a sneak attack, but the brute applies his special technique, locking Seven's limbs like an anabolic tick for 4 straight days. Seven is drained of all energy. When 13 reappears to claim an easy kill, she fails because her blade shatters against Dachan's indestructible virgin body technique, forcing her to retreat in bitterness. After a bizarre moment of bro bonding on the pier, a heat-seeking missile tears through the atmosphere, putting his badge above his own oxygen. The mountain of muscle martyrizes his own flesh to protect Seven and the bystanders from a cowardly explosive fired by a cybernetic invader from Stan. While the mob chicken scolds the swole chicken for rescuing the bodyguard instead of his best employee, Seven is cornered on the beach by the robotic aggressor from Stan. Instead of explaining the local terrorism, the cyborg scans Seven and suffers a system crash upon recognizing him as the ruthless chief assassin of Schwan Wu. The high-tech brat fires a purifying laser, frying Seven's scissors instantly. But when the machine fires a second shot point blank, our amnesiac loser dodges with terrifying dexterity as fragments of his bloody past flash through his mind. Xiao Fei whisks Seven away without permission, leaving the arrogant shooter, officially revealed as the Prince of Stan, to continue his villainous schedule. Marching to the heart of the island, the prince prepares his spherical ship to obliterate the local monument and suck out the energy rock, the core that keeps the island from sinking. Desperate to save his land, a pantsless Uncle Chen runs into the epicenter. The cat boss tries to claw the tin royalty, only to get her nails trimmed via laser. The rocker dog tries a romantic rescue with lethal guitar solos, but the gourmet armor absorbs the decibels and knocks the animal lovebirds out with an energy whip. Even Uncle Chen's outdated pistol fails, earning the old man a glowing hole in his chest. Just before everyone becomes alien BBQ, the little cancer patient enters the fray with a flirtation so cheap, it makes the incel robot's circuits overheat with shyness. Complaining that women are too much work, he traps the girl in a gravity bubble. Hearing the unforgivable misogyny, the puritanical chairperson Zhang decides to collect the sexist tax with her fists. She ends up cornered by oppressive artillery, but at the last chaotic second, our reborn mercenary restores her dignity, dragging her to safety and facing the prince head-on, wielding a true sword. In a dramatic flashback designed to pull at cheap heartstrings, our useless hairdresser decides to embrace a suicide mission to honor the contract of his buff bodyguard, reciting the exact motivational quote of a dead rooster about needing to try just to see the outcome. This touches Daibo's mobster heart, and he finally spits out the truth about how he fished the protagonist out of the trash, returning his valuable dagger. But since the power of friendship can't deflect lasers, Seven takes a brutal beating from the high-tech brat until his cheap blade shatters into pieces. A second away from becoming smoked ham, 13 appears out of nowhere throwing her kunai, which the rich kid deflects with pure luminous cowardice. Dissatisfied, the assassin uses her sword to shred the prince's clothes, exposing his stiff, vibrating cybernetic arm for the world to see. The cyborg recognizes the girl from a past doctor's assassination, but before the tea can be spilled, the rescue bird plunges from the sky, pumps up his roped-out muscles, and smashes the rich kid's barrier through pure avian hatred. Fed up with being bullied by the local wildlife, the prince fuses his hoverboard into a towering robotic suit and KOs the buff chicken in the blink of an eye. Desperate, Seven shamelessly plagiarizes the bodyguard's body-hardening technique and uses his chi blades to penetrate deep, impaling both himself and the prince in a painful double skewer through the chest. However, the villain reveals he installed a backup Bluetooth heart and survives the brutal embrace. Daibo tries to act like a badass by flicking a cigar in the royal's face, proclaiming himself the king of chickens, only to get showered in aggressive lasers and run away like a coward, begging the buff chicken to carry the hero to safety. While 13 holds the line, Seven's brain finally boots up, downloading the Lethal Assassin update. Gripping the broken hilt with his dark energy, he dashes at absurd speeds and severs the Prince of Stan's tin limb right through his shield, leaving him one-handed.
Goodbye.
The robotic incel appeals to a final giant mech suit, but Seven simply extends his blade of shards and slices the scrap metal in half, collapsing from glorious exhaustion right after. 13 live streams the brawl to her master, Green Phoenix, who orders her to finish off the useless boy and steal the weapon. Yielding to her hidden feelings, the assassin spares Seven for having saved her life before and flees, taking only his sword. Upon waking up in the Mad Doctor's clinic, our hero is back to being the same idiot as always, sporting a brand new pair of giant scissors provided by his waifu. Jumping into the mandatory tragic backstory, a sniper tries to take out a decrepit old man climbing the stairs of his own temple, but the arrogant geezer simply slices the bullet midair and flicks an energized leaf to give the sniper a lethal head piercing. Little 13 then narrates how her boomer father, the formidable Plum Blossom Master, was constantly harassed by fame seekers. When the heir to the Spear of Conquest tried to shove an iron rod down his throat, the old man humiliated his opponent using nothing but the piercing glare of his own energy. Seizing the scraps, the little girl scavenged a broken spearhead that would become her first butter knife. Unfortunately, the traditionalist old man refused to teach his techniques to any of his 13 daughters, convinced the female brain couldn't process sword forms. Tired of playing genetic roulette, the master drags a fertile new woman home who finally spits a male heir into the world, providing the perfect excuse to kick 13 and her mother out of the temple without a severance package. Left in the gutter without understanding the patriarchal rejection, the two stop at a tea stall only to be ambushed by a hideous brute choking on vengeance against the absent master. The child prodigy tries to trade blows with the bully, incapacitating the poor soul for a few seconds, but watches from the front row as her own mother is disfigured and murdered by a random mook swinging a spiked mace. Before the girl can swallow her tears, a masked edgelord pops out of thin air, ripping the throat out of the mace guy and a useless swordsman who was only there for the body count. Throwing herself over her mother's fresh corpse, the manic orphan shamelessly begs her masked savior to teach her martial arts, swearing she'll gain enough strength to slice every misogynistic man on Earth, including her own despicable father. The assassin simply asks for the budding psychopath's name, adopting the traumatized child, and securing the start of a blessed, bloody career. Diving into another past regression to spice up the trauma, Daibo's best friend, an optimistic rooster named Da Fei, decides to throw his life into the meat grinder by entering an underground betting ring to secure the agribusiness of his little chick. Daibo tries to inject a grain of sanity into his partner's head, warning him he has zero chance against professional birds. But the idiot drops the brilliant justification that he needs to test his limits to see the outcome, outsourcing his parental responsibility and shoving Xiaofei's custody under the mobster bird's wings. Defying the slaughterhouse odds, the scrawny rooster steps into the arena against King Pheasant in a timed match. Contradicting all heavyweight logic, Da Fei dodges brutal blows by shaking his tail feathers and uses his annoying agility to beat the mountain of clean muscle within regulation time. But the massive Pheasant has a nervous breakdown, terrified of the inevitable idea of becoming nuggets for fat humans, and decides that sportsmanship is optional. Pulling out a shady syringe filled with a mutant steroid called DX, the loser buries the needle in his own body, healing wounds and inflating his muscles into a grotesque proportion of concentrated juice. Fully doped and without an ethical break, the massive bird ignores the fact that the fight is over and beats Da Fei mercilessly until the poor dreaming chicken becomes a rug of bloody feathers and ground meat. Locked behind the audience railing, unable to do anything but watch his best friend be butchered by cowardice, Daibo absorbs the impact in his soul, swearing he will drown that arena in revenge and clear his species' name with explicit violence. Embracing the parental guardianship shoved down his throat, Daibo tells little Xiaofei they are now a dysfunctional family before making the worst decision of his life, entering the same arena that turned his best friend into pate. Knowing his chances are absolutely zero against King Pheasant, the bespectacled rooster decides the best strategy is to become a voluntary punching bag. For 4 long minutes, Daibo is mercilessly crushed, disfigured, and humiliated. But since this chicken's audacity knows no bounds, he spends the whole time flipping the bird at his executioner, proving that getting beaten with style is a mystic art. Meanwhile, the massive King Pheasant realizes time is running out. Remembering his manager's gentle warning that if the fight lasts more than 5 minutes, he's going straight to the deep fryer for Sunday lunch. In an absolute panic to avoid becoming nuggets, the buff giant reaches into his pockets for his mutant steroid shot, only to discover he's been mugged in the middle of the ring. Flaunting the stolen syringe with the arrogance of a bird with nothing to lose, Daibo reveals that being beaten into a pulp was all a 4D chess move to pick the big guy's pocket. After a quick hallucination of Da Fei's ghost telling him to protect the kid, Daibo doesn't think twice. He buries the radioactive juice needle into his own body, sucking all the mystery cream into his veins to undergo a colossal mutation that'll make the Pheasant regret ever being born with feathers. Injected with pure mutant testosterone, Daibo reaches a level of hypertrophy that would make any gym rat cry with envy, turning into an unstoppable beast. King Pheasant tries to solve the problem by throwing a haymaker at his face, but the blow has the same effect as throwing cotton at a concrete wall. Seeing that brute force failed, the Pheasant despairs, sprouts a pair of blue wings out of nowhere, and launches a flaming punch. Daibo simply catches the attack with one hand, like a father restraining a cranky toddler before grinding his coopmate into the dirt. Still laughing with a mouthful of soil, the loser vomits a nihilistic speech about how no matter how strong you are, the fate of every fighting cock is to end up in a pressure cooker. But Daibo couldn't care less about his existential crisis, revealing that the real target was always someone else, and hurls King Pheasant beak first straight at his sadistic manager. Shocked by the avian rebellion, the suit pulls a gun and shoots his own fighter to get him out of the way, only to see Daibo lunging at his throat with killer reflexes, threatening to rip his windpipe out if he doesn't free all the captive birds. With the chickens loose, Daibo prepares to execute the corporate hack, but his fury is interrupted when he realizes Xiaofei is watching everything with innocent eyes. Swallowing his hate to avoid traumatizing the kid, he chooses only to smash the guy's body against the concrete. The dose of magic juice finally expires, shutting down Daibo's brain, and he collapses on the spot. When the manager tries to take a cowardly shot at the fallen bird, Xiaofei grabs his adoptive father and flies away. The chaotic chaotic escape ends with them face-planting on Chicken Island, where Xiao Fei stumbles upon an unconscious human body on the beach. Daibo, overflowing with prejudice against our useless species, tries to leave the human ham to rot in the sand. But seeing the chick heroically massaging the body and realizing the human trash is still breathing, the rooster sighs in defeat and decides to drag the dead weight to the local doctor. Peaceful Chicken Island is invaded by a modern plague when a trio of stylish hairdressers opens an overpriced salon, using chi energy for extravagant haircuts. Infiltrating at maximum stealth disguised as a lamppost, Seven invades the shop and uses his chi-guided scissors to shear the lead stylist's hair, completely ignoring the thick layer of mutant hair gel from that tech country on the crazy guy's head. Furious at the capillary decapitation, the trio chases Seven and Daibo. In a pathetic attempt to fly away, our brainless protagonist tries to grab Xiao Fei's wing, but ends up grabbing Daibo and a random cat by accident, taking off and leaving Seven on the ground to deal with the barber's fury.
Xiao Fei, that's not me! Drop the cat!
Later, Da-chan shows up to warn them that there's a bounty on Seven's head, flashing posters of 4 sinister assassins. Smelling the opportunity to profit off someone else's misery, Daibo accepts the mission wholeheartedly, introducing his latest useless invention to the corporate market, Hair Wax number 7. What follows is a record-breaking survival mode. Seven goes to grab a snack and is confronted by F.A. the gambler, discarding the guy in seconds. Next, he crushes another random underdog. Desperately needing to empty his bladder, Seven heads to the urinal, and in the middle of his liquid relief, an ordinary assassin tries to hit his blind spot by surprise. Seven beats the crap out of him without even swaying his body, leaving the poor guy in deep depression, not just for getting thrashed in the bathroom, but for realizing he is painfully mediocre. As the sun begins to set, we see Uncle Chen writhing in pain on the ground while Cola faces off against the swordsman Spring-Wind Ichiro. Seven steps into the chaos and tells Cola to drag the dramatic old man to the mad doctor. The duel begins with Ichiro firing a lethal strike from his sword, but Seven simply embraces the energy with his scissors and flings the blade back. When Ichiro blocks the inverted metal thinking he's a grandmaster, Seven takes the opening to bury a fist directly in his face. Trying to exit with dignity, the swordsman asks for his attacker's true identity. When Seven claims to be the island's best barber, Ichiro suddenly decides he wants to sit in his chair for a trim. Back at the clinic, we discover that Dr. J's surgery was an abyss of embarrassment, extracting only a massive kidney stone from Uncle Chen, proving he was just being dramatic about a cramp and hadn't even been shot. And when the trio of cuckolded barbers returns demanding a lethal scissor showdown against Seven, the imposing 13 pops up out of nowhere to kill the mood, warning that a true storm of killers is about to flood the place. Trying to play the masked spy, the swordsman Ichiro shows up at the salon, but our useless protagonist recognizes the guy in 0 seconds. The poor soul has become a convenience store stalker and just wants to talk to a cute customer, so Seven jumps into action and carves the guy's hair into a bizarre giant UFO shape. Meanwhile, the mobster bird Daibo handbills the salon's anniversary until the puritanical chairman Zhang accuses the chicken of being a scammer. In an attempt to prove his integrity, Daibo swears that if he's a fraud, the establishment's sign would fall, and since the universe loves to humiliate anything with a beak, the sign immediately collapses.
Chairman, we can get rid of those grays! Come on, man. We're legit! May I be struck down if I... Really?
But it wasn't divine intervention. The blame lies with the masked assassin 13, who shredded the wood while trying to slice Seven, who was calmly hanging his underwear on the clothesline. After some nostalgic memories of the time she failed her primary mission, was saved by Seven, and vowed to behead the barber after he recovered, the killer hunts her prey across the island to a playground. Sensing the tension melting his morale, Seven drops an alpha male ultimatum. If she wins, the failure disappears forever. If he wins, he gets his dagger back and the assassin is forced to wear something skimpy and go on a tropical beach date with him. The duel starts hot. 13 recalls her fanatical master saying emotions are a killer's worst enemy, but the atmosphere of violent romance is brutally softened by her older sister, Plum Blossom 11. The intruder fails miserably at assassinating the target and flees, forcing 13 to swallow her pride and concede victory. 7 refuses to take his medal back, thanking her for the chi-guided scissors she sharpened just for his pleasure. Atop a pole, the assassin drops a bombshell, throwing a scroll with a bounty on half the island's heads, warning that hordes of killers will come drooling after them before sailing away on a colossal bird. Closing the day of capillary glory, Ichiro uses his own flat Pantagruelian hair as an umbrella to protect the girl from the rain, finally managing to dampen his beloved's heart. Keeping up the tradition of attracting only the bankrupt dregs of society, Seven serves a hobo who pays for his own haircut using an old hairstyle magazine instead of cash. Far from the mediocrity of the salon, a bespectacled dog armed with a guitar invades Mad Bark's territory, unleashing acoustic terror and sweeping his canine guard straight into the trash. The next morning, Mad Bark wakes up on a stretcher at the salon surrounded by the unemployed squad, whining about how he was absurdly humiliated by a sad little tune from the rocker mutt. Dai Bo, who is apparently an animal depression sommelier, recognizes the melody immediately and cooks up a trap worthy of a misunderstood genius. At night, Mad sits on the grass with a glass of wine, acting as the lively bait. The assassin dog appears and immediately immobilizes the leader with his sound magic, but gets a death scare when the wine bottle transforms into our elastic barber, who catches the attacker in his legendary 7-day immobilization. The musical edgelord doesn't give up, freeing himself by playing another wretched tune and lunging at a Seven who is suddenly softened by melancholy, only to be saved by the partner chicken's intervention. In a tactic of pure stupidity, the dummy stuffs the bird Xiao Fei into his ears to serve as fluffy earplugs, which does nothing and results in more of a beating. When the musician tries to finish the ex-leader and send Mad to the afterworld, the imposing Meow Kitty interrupts the mess, recognizing the attacking mutt as Meow Kai. After having his disguise ripped off by Seven, the guy spills his entire rejected incel past. He tried to lick the cat years ago, but got the biggest rejection of his life when she preferred the big dog. Frustrated and stuffed with jealousy, he fled to Schwan Wu, learned the lethal magic sound art of sadness, and returned only to prove he was worthy of mating with her. Even with all this demonstration of fragile masculinity and repressed crying, she rejects the poor guy to his face once again. The musician turns his back on the island the next day, and to crown the business's failure, Seven proudly confesses he traded his expensive hair wax for a simple map of Schwan Wu, earning him a capitalist scolding from the mobster bird. The terminally ill young girl Cola invades the barbershop, deathly hating the new cut the amateur gave her and demanding immediate attention. Since Seven prefers drooling over his dirty hairstyling magazine and has zero interest in socializing, the girl bribes Daibo with a wad of high-value bills, forcing the chicken to sell the protagonist's dignity and time as a cheap escort. During the humiliating babysitting stroll, we discovered the insane doctor didn't remove the girl's tumor, but stuffed her with aged bean puree instead, cutting the need for chemo, but making it clear the magic supply is limited and she should embrace the chaos while she's still breathing. Exuding the manic energy of someone with no future bills to pay, Cola hops on her skateboard and flies off. Our retired killer tries to keep the pace, but his moped is out of gas, and he is suddenly tied up by the thick, invisible, and wet tongue of an assassin named Lee Zard.
You can't breathe or drink. I'll call for help with my tongue wrapped.
Lost in the trees, the girl majestically stumbles upon the imposing Prince of Stan, who had just recovered his shiny tech toys. With no tolerance for villain dialogue, she touches him, paralyzes the cyborg's overpriced muscles, and demands to be taken to his land, or she'll have the barber smash that smooth face again. The playboy obeys, a hostage to the paralysis, flying to Stan in his armored ship while our useless protagonist continues to rub against the camouflaged lizard's sticky tongue. Because he's too invisible and equally stupid, the assassin reptile walks into the street and is instantly crushed by a random car. Arriving at the tech center, the school trip turns into a dark genetic thriller. The minister and a little robot poke at the girl and reveal she is literally Specimen 303, an unstable experiment manufactured in Stan's labs by her own mother. The prince acts all benevolent and offers the final cure if she signs away her freedom and becomes a permanent lab rat, but she virtually spits on the proposal and catches a direct flight home. Returning to familiar asphalt, the brat reunites with her rented babysitter and they hop on the sputtering moped, sliding down the highway while dragging the flayed lizard behind them. Far away, the prince swallows his resentment while watching the scene, dying of envy for the taste of that pathetic yet inexplicably free life. While our useless protagonist pretends he knows how to cook by selling beef offal in front of the school, the phone rings warning him that the mobster chicken has become a hostage in his own beauty salon. The kidnapper is none other than the razor razor-edged emo Captain Jack and his 2 generic henchmen, who have come to collect payback for a scar the barber gave him in the past. A scar that, thanks to his incredibly convenient amnesia, 7 doesn't even remember making. On the other side of the island, 13 takes 7's rusty sword to an expert and discovers the weapon carries the horribly cheesy name 1,000 Demon Daggers. Meanwhile, Jack sets up a clandestine BBQ, dousing Dai-Bo in gasoline and promising to turn him into an exquisite roast chicken if the amnesiac doesn't win the fight in 10 minutes. The barber tries to use his magic scissors to cut the rope, but the henchmen block the strike with a bizarre heart-shaped board, forcing the protagonist to resort to schoolyard brawling. Watching from the front row atop a tree, 13 feels a bizarre gust of wind and decides to spy on the public humiliation. The salon owner overloads his little scissors, but the emo pirate demands to be penetrated by a real sword. Realizing the tragic incompetence of his own existence, the protagonist makes the brilliant decision to slice his own chest like a dramatic teenager punishing himself for attention. 13 finally drops from her perch to cover the bleeding boy, threatening Jack with death. But at the exact moment the pirate tries to steal her overpriced weapon, 7's killer instinct wakes up from its coma. He saves the girl and returns the favor by furiously trimming the entire side of Jack's hair. Completely destroyed by the capillary tragedy, the pirate runs away in tears carrying his henchmen, proving that aesthetic destruction hurts much more than a punctured back.
No pictures, please!
Patched up in the local mad doctor's office, the barber crawls back to 13 only to bribe her with a swimsuit of questionable taste, praying for the long-awaited beach date. A lunatic with a paper bag over his head bursts into the salon, shoving a phone in Dai-Bo's face. The screen shows a staged video of the protagonist and the buff chick agonizing as hostages in a hideout. Blinded by desperation, the small racketeer chicken flies to the coordinates only to plummet into an obvious trap set by King Pheasant, his former sparring master who miraculously survived and returned upgraded as a recycled RoboCop cosplay. No lethal threat is complete without a depressing monologue, so the metallic bird wastes precious minutes whining about how the scientists from Stan sliced him up and stuffed him with cybernetic steroids. He brags about taking down a professional killer from Schwan Wu and declares he's here to collect the bounty on his old enemy's head. Ignoring the villainous rant, Dai-Bo pumps his muscles without using illegal stimulants for the first time in his life and goes on the offensive.
I'm using the enhancer!
However, the stolen tech from Stan reads the chicken's moves like a children's comic book, slamming Dai-Bo against the concrete slabs. With a robotic claw pinned to his neck, Pheasant offers the luxury of a final wish. The plucked leader begs for the lives of 7 and Xiao Fei, swallowing his pride to confess that the barber boy finally purged the deadly hatred he held against the human race. Sickened by this nauseating motivational talk, the machine raises its weapon to execute the old bird, but the charade falls apart. The hostages rip off their disguises to reveal the protagonist and the Jack chick ready to scrap. Together, they shatter the bird's cybernetic parts, preparing to scrap the metal for good. But mysteriously, Dai-Bo demands they spare the humiliated cyborg and bail. Back at the filthy safety of the hair salon, 7 patches up his avian manager and softly admits he'd rather sweep up horrible hair from the floor than embrace his lethal heritage. The art of turning zero profit never stops at the salon, forcing 7 to serve a deadbeat who tries to pay his tab with shamanic speeches about chi fluidity. In the middle of the cosmic chatter, a female ninja launches a sharp star with an invitation pinned straight into the client's left arm, draining the poor devil's veins onto the shop floor. The protagonist harvests the romantic message, ignoring the comatose blood donor in his lap, squealing like a schoolgirl upon discovering that 13 has scheduled their long-awaited seaside date for 8 p.m. To avoid disappointing the assassin with his constant scent of beef offal, the barber spends his afternoon stealing tactics from soap opera heartthrobs. He acquires a funeral-looking black flower from that amateur swindler grandma and covertly usurps the flashy style of his buff neighbor to reach his aesthetic peak. When the clock strikes the hour, the protagonist dumps his worst bilingual vocabulary onto the dark sand, handing his funeral flower to the guest of honor. Immediately, the girl wipes off her facial disguise to reveal herself as the slippery Plum Blossom 11, returning the romantic gesture by plunging a toxin-laced dagger deep into our poor hero's back. With the venom slicing through his logic and his motor skills failing, Ching. Seven falls prostrate just as the immense chased wall Dachan emerges from the shadows, clocking in to maintain local integrity. Noticing the security guard's divine physique, 11 shamelessly throws herself at him, trying to seduce the brute, only to be obliterated by his colossal virgin rejection, forcing a chaotic clash on the sand. Throughout this show of continuous martial destruction, Seven reaches a deep stage of poisonous hallucination, sitting peacefully on the sand to flip through adult magazines for corner barbers. Miraculously expelling the death liquor through his glands via bizarre abdominal crunches and ridiculous stretches. Seeing the tide turn and the evangelical chairman Zheng arrive to seal the sky with her merciless spiritual cleansing, the seductress plans to fly away to survive and tell the tale. However, her flight path collides with the flying entrance of the authentic 13, whose shields block the execution. Amidst the frantic confusion, the survivor simply empties his wallet of roses into the hands of his true beloved in silent gratitude. Without exchanging words of encouragement, the lethal maiden yanks her platonic admirer's underwear off in a split second and flies away, carrying her unbearable sister by the arms, only to be intercepted by hostile shadows before they even hit the next sidewalk. A man calling himself the Iron-Handed Dragon King obliterates a wild beast and fashions a fashionable fur coat, thinking he's the season's big, untouchable villain. But his runway walk lasts exactly 5 seconds before Green Phoenix erases him from existence and proudly crosses the name off his ledger. Cleaning up the mess, Ching packs his gear with a Mini 13 and parades through the wasteland, handing out casual homicides while the girl nearly freezes until her soul becomes a sad popsicle. Eventually, a recruiter with the stench of a pyramid scheme approaches the duo and invites Ching to join the elite shadow assassins. Reaching the age of 21, the rookie adopts the tag Green Phoenix, only to see his boss introduce a prodigy recruit who goes by the quaint name of Seven. Wasting no time with HR, a maniac from the same guild named Redtooth corners our protagonist in a dirt alley, desperately begging for a deadly trade of blows. Seven refuses the intimate invitation because he only works designated targets, but the fanged vampire pestered him so much that a brawl inevitably breaks out. Watching from a stone balcony like a true gossiping psychopath, Ching analyzes every move, focusing solely on the Scissor Boy. The fight narrows down when Seven drives his blade into his opponent, only to immediately feel his vital energy being sucked out in an extremely uncomfortable and invasive way. To make the unwanted contact worse, the spiky lunatic sinks his filthy fangs deep into our hero's left shoulder, tasting the boy's vitality while undergoing a metamorphosis into an even more animalistic freak. Before the life drain becomes irreversible, Ching jumps into the chaos and ends the weird party. Redtooth masks the blatant humiliation by calling the assassination attempt a mere guild hazing and vanishes from the crime scene. Taking advantage of the settling dust, Ching suggestively whispers that Seven should find a much longer and more efficient instrument, placing the legendary Thousand Demon Daggers on the traumatized victim's shopping horizon. The Supreme Puritan Chairman Zhang receives an intimate visit from the lecherous Redtooth at her home, and the friendly chat quickly ignites into a structural demolition that hurls them both straight into Seven's suspicious beef offal stall. Uncle Chen and Ichiro are slurping their worst soups nearby, but their standard strikes against the fanged freak fail miserably, with the swordsman quickly identifying the carnage as the work of the Shadow Seven. While Dai Bo and Xiao Fei hide behind the nearest tree eating imaginary popcorn, Seven mourns his beloved shop crushed into the asphalt, alongside a Dachan who focuses solely on the bizarre invader's chronic bleeding gum problem. Ignoring the failing witnesses, Redtooth informs Zhang of the juicy bounty on her head but dismisses the money, demanding instead that she remove the magical seal that castrates his true powers. The lady refuses, forcing the bloodsucker to lung at her throat like a rabid dog. Seven saves the old woman's life in an absurdly humiliating way, grabbing Dachan's armored body and wielding the human wall of muscle like an unbreakable sword. The martial spectacle twists Zhang's brain while Dai Bo decides to ignore morality and starts organizing an illegal betting ring on who survives the slaughterhouse. The unusual duo almost tames the beast until the incorruptible idiot Dachan decides to open his heart and blurt out his own hardening level. Graciously thanking him for the data leak, Redtooth stabs his fingers directly into the guard's exposed weak point and drains the chump's Tichi. Completely out of options, Jiang suggests a power transfer kiss to turn the tide. Ignoring Seven's discomfort, the old woman drains the barber's battery and magically expels the old age from her own body, returning to her status as a lethal, youthful waifu ready to crush her past trauma. Old memories of the firm flicker on screen, revealing that Jiang almost became the CEO of the White Lotus, which infuriated Redtooth enough to seize a demon and tear up everyone's ID badges with pure carnage. Jiang traps her mutant stalker in the most broken move of her repertoire, to perform a forced exorcism and extirpate the demonic bloodsucker from his gut. The addict's refusal to let go of his demon is so intense that his body begins to disintegrate, a fact that melts the Puritan's useless heart, causing her to cancel the miracle and spare the psychopath's life. Celebrating his survival in the worst way possible, Redtooth lashes out at the trinity of Daibo, Xiaofei, and Seven. The fanged bastard impales our weakened hero and hits the jackpot of unlimited energy, threatening to swallow every last drop and turn the boy into a raisin if Jiang doesn't finally implode the seal. Being strangled in the courtyard like a useless scarecrow, Seven plummets into his own psyche, facing his own assassin ghost. He laments having to abandon the utopia of short scissors and questionable lotions, but finally accepts his past's overdue invoice. This acceptance fires up his hidden engines, and Seven bursts out of the trance, burying strikes back into Redtooth's face. Seizing the chance to steal the spotlight, Green Phoenix stealthily lands right at the epicenter of the commotion. The master tosses the legendary blade into the forgotten boy's lap and conjures an opaque magical bubble, shielding the fight from the island's gossips. But while the closed arena boils, Phoenix notes that the scrawny barber is working with a pathetic fraction of his former glory, serving as a punching bag for the fanged fury. Filled with practical disdain, the Phoenix usurps the kill and dispatches Redtooth to hell under his own rules, speaking to the protagonist that the psychopaths will wipe out the entire island if he doesn't drag his lethal carcass back to the Schwan Wu headquarters. The barrier falls, revealing the manipulated theater, causing the bystanders to buy into the myth that the boy with the messy hair sliced up the beastly predator alone. In the weeks following the glorious farce, Chicken Island becomes a tourist attraction for every pathetic thug seeking instant fame against the newborn myth. Adjusting his wardrobe on his discreet way out of town, Seven intercepts the face of another deluded chump, disposing of the human trash with a short message. Tell your leaders that the world's greatest reaper is coming back to collect the chief's head. Back in the land of psychopaths, Schwan Wu, a bunch of gossiping extras discuss how Redtooth was sent to the afterlife by a barber, only to have their own blood drained by a flower assassin before they can even pay their tab. Going back 5 days before our amnesiac protagonist's dramatic departure, Seven decides to play barber with Uncle Chen before wasting his patience on the sickly brat, Cola. Realizing the girl attracts trouble like a fridge magnet, he outsources her security to the invisible chameleon, Lee Zard, forcing the creature to become a full-time babysitter. Meanwhile, the Shadow Assassin's headquarters swallows the news of Redtooth's death and decides to dispatch an army of incompetents to Chicken Island. The first chump to land goes by the ridiculous name of Yo-Yo, trying to act tough until Seven ruins his strings without breaking a sweat. Celebrating the victory, the barber decides to open his own thick and juicy beef offal stall in the park, handing out tender pieces and pocketing the profit. Observing from afar, 13 gets a free pass from Green Phoenix to eye her beloved one last time before he vanishes from the map, dumping all his hard-earned sticky cash onto Dr. Xiao's Miracle Doctor counter to settle absurd medical debts. Seven barely has time to breathe before crushing a lizard cosplayer named Bamboo Dragon. Cleaning up the mess, he stares at a token from his past, triggers his nostalgia, and intercepts another random assassin. Instead of slicing the poor guy, the barber delivers a profound message and sends him back as a carrier pigeon to warn the higher-ups. The Reaper is coming to Schwan Wu to collect the rent. The message is successfully delivered, earning Seven a colossal bounty on his empty head. Running through the woods like a hunted animal with soiled pants, Seven flees from assassins in a nightmare so pathetic it makes Daibo wake up in a cold sweat right on Dr. Xiao's gurney. The startled bird soon discovers through the island's Fantastic Four of failures that the ex-barber's head is now worth a country's entire GDP. Racing back to the salon, the greedy chicken finds the empty hangar where the protagonist's classic emo outfit used to be, triggering an unnecessary flashback to 2 years ago. Back then, a newborn to Society 7 would drool over his own uniform, while Dai-Bo told tall tales. Eager to sell questionable meat on the streets, the chicken spots Dr. Xiao and starts stalking the old man, convinced the doctor is hiding a diamond big enough to fund his retirement. While 7 was stuffing offal into customers' mouths, Dai-Bo invented the flimsiest lie of the century. He pretended to have been poisoned by the sadistic doctor over a kickback debt, forcing the innocent amnesiac to break into the clinic to steal the supposed antidote box. In the dead of night, the protagonist proves his total lack of stealth by falling straight into a subterranean trapdoor. Down there, monstrous shelves begin to crush the space like a glorified trash compactor. Our genius of deduction solves the lethal enigma using academic knowledge pulled straight from a random TV game show. Of course, the scheme goes sideways, and he gets beat up by the old wood anyway, surviving through pure plot armor. Upon reaching the secret room, he catches Dr. Xiao displaying a fake face on the table, but Dai-Bo bursts in to mess everything up in his search for the shiny stone. The heist turns into chaos when the mad doctor pulls out a remote control, activating pillar traps and a violent furnace ready to roast the birds. Back in the present, the mafia chicken finishes dumping this nostalgic tale into poor Xiao Fei's ear as the duo sails in a rickety boat, trying to rescue their suicidal friend. Dressed in the most humiliating fish costume ever conceived, 7 tries to snag a catch in the ocean, but nearly becomes sushi in the jaws of an even larger sea monster.
Hey, I'm not done with you. I don't taste good.
Defying the laws of biology, the barber guts the beast, tosses the meat inside, and accelerates his raft, powered by a dentist's drill motor, toward a mysterious mainland. The tropical paradise is known as Dolly Island, infested with women possessing dangerous curves and questionable morals. The protagonist quickly blames the loudmouth stray Mad Bark for being lost at the end of the world, but forgives the dog the moment the beauties flaunt their assets at him. Believing he's living the perfect wet dream, 7 gulps down a white liquid from a spiked coconut offered by one of the ladies, instantly melting into a realm of nightmares. He wakes up locked in a filthy cell alongside Miao Kai, who warns him about the underhanded scam. To get out of the hole, they need to take down the Prince of Handsome, a cursed narcissist who enchanted the crowd with a magical makeup mirror. 7's confidence withers upon discovering the stray lost his his guitar, at sea, reducing the duo's firepower to 0. Luckily for them, Dai-Bo and Xiao Fei bust into the prison, staged a shameful escape. The quartet invades the royal dandy's space, who aims his magical glass to convert Miao Kai into a submissive cat. Using a magically transformed Dai-Bo as a blunt instrument, the mutt ties up 7 while the prince prepares a forced facial plastic surgery on the hero. The chicken recovers his base form, releases his partner, and shatters the enchanted mirror with a shot. Deprived of his favorite toy, the prince pulls out a tacky disco ball to reflect his power, but 7 dances and distracts the preppy guy long enough for Dai-Bo to slap Miao Kai back to reality. The gimpy cat then sings a ballad so romantic and miserable it deeply touches the villain, breaking the curse through pure aesthetic suffering. With their normal faces back, the natives dispatch the trio on a brand new raft. The cat decides to stay on the island to massage the cured prince's ego, while 7 sets sail toward infinite doom with his troop of pet poultry. While our clueless protagonist is out of town, 13 remains planted on the beach wearing the little dress he picked out, looking like a total chump waiting for a crush who never shows. Her older sister, the relentless 11, pops out of nowhere to warn her that the Flying Bird sect wants her head for stealing some martial arts manuals. But 11 doesn't care about books, she just wants to find a man of respect to take home. That's when she runs into the walking wall of muscle named Dachan, who is in the middle of his sacred push-up routine. 11 tries to seduce him by rubbing her dangerous curves against him, but Dachan's armored brain doesn't process lust, and he shoves her away before trying to handcuff her. Desperate to avoid jail, she invents a sob story, throws some money in his face, and hires him as her personal bodyguard, heading to Schwan Wu. When the duo stops to devour some succulent meat buns, a random extra tries to hit on 11. To test if her bodyguard is up to the task, she provokes the unsuspecting guy, and Dachan mops the floor with him and his drooling lackeys.
No need to fight. You should calm down.
Soon, the Flying Bird sect appears to capture the book thief, forcing our rent-a-guard to beat up the members and force one of them to show the way to the enemy base. Arriving at the lair, interim leader Bai prepares the girl's execution, but Da-chan lays the smackdown on everyone until only the boss is left. Tired of using his hardening technique to tank hits, Bai challenges Da-chan to a one-on-one duel, only to be completely crushed by the 7 days virgin lock move. In the end, 11 returns the stolen book, revealing that the sect leader only handed the object over to try and sleep with her. As the sun sets, the two lovebirds sit on the grass, and Da-chan promises to be this crazy girl's official protector. The troop of talking poultry and our amnesiac barber dock at a piece of land called Hard Island, which happens to be the birthplace of the concrete block known as Da-chan. When Daibo tries to order food and realizes the local grub tastes like sweaty cardboard, he starts insulting everyone, summoning the supreme leader Master Chen. The meathead master thinks the insults came from Seven and challenges our scrawny hero to a duel of brute strength, promising to devour the birds if he loses, or hand over his greatest treasure if he's defeated. The first challenge consists of breaking 18 layers of walls with pure ignorance. Chen smashes through everything without sweating, while Seven fails pathetically at the first barrier. The second stage requires crushing a giant rock against one's own chest, which, you guessed it, our useless protagonist also fails miserably. The final stage arrives and Chen proposes they punch each other without dodging. Confident that he knows Da-chan's indestructible virgin technique, Seven agrees, only to discover that literally everyone on this island is untouchable due to a lack of romantic action. When he tries to bargain using Da-chan's name, Chen spits fire and reveals that he was the one who kicked the big guy out. Seized by fury, Seven uses the same blood-sucking technique as Redtooth, draining Chen's energy to the last drop and deflating the buff leader's muscles. In absolute panic at becoming a malnourished weakling, Chen starts doing physics-defying push-ups and regains his lean mass just long enough to punch the hero in the face. Seven tanks the hit with his own souped-up version of chaste purity, pulling out his $1,500 scissors and forcing the bodybuilder's surrender. Before hitting the raft toward Schwan Wu, they receive the legendary reward kept under lock and key, only to discover that the great treasure was a jar of golden whey protein. Navigating through a bizarre swamp that rewrites anatomy, Daibo stretches his legs like an anorexic Prada model, while Seven gets bloated like a spoiled pufferfish. They run into a kid named Pingan hiding in the brush, and the mafia bird orders the protagonist to finish the brat, but the excess fat deforms any aggressive action. Suddenly, the raft starts floating magically, and the kid asks why they are invading the land of superpowers. Seven tries to act tough, claiming to be an assassin, but the group is instantly drowned in the lake's filthy soup. When they manage to breathe again, Seven confesses he's just a barber, but his abusive prices earn them a second, complimentary dip. After humiliating his profession by giving the kid the worst haircut ever seen, they discover a fugitive hobo landed there last month. The kid guides them to the camp of Cheap Hua, a vagrant playing fireball soccer with 2 other mutant children. Sitting by the campfire, Seven learns the homeless man dug an escape tunnel from Schwan Wu and agrees to give him a free fade in exchange for the hole's location. The business deal goes down the drain when a heavy metal ship from Stan lands in the yard, crushing the mood. The Prince of Stan exits accompanied by Cola, but they are ambushed by thick vines controlled by the rebellious children, who are tired of being kidnapped by suits to serve as lab rats. The dandy dons his tech armor and mops the floor with the brats, interrupted by Cola herself, who forbids a massacre. Seizing the free chaos, Seven lunges at the arrogant cyborg to finish their old grudge, turning the swamp into an explicit arena. In the middle of the blind brawl, the prince accidentally hits Cola and suffers a moral short circuit for nearly sending the poor girl to the afterlife. The same children he was beating up approach and promise to heal the girl, forcing the heir of Stan to rethink whether his life choices were worth it. With Cola's life hanging by a thread, the gossip mill churns as Pingan drops a bombshell. The girl is toast unless she swallows a magical black jade paste. The Prince of Stan, acting like a high-tech preppy, tries to play hero with his fancy ship, but Beggar Hua reveals he stashed a thick tube of that life-saving sludge in his luxury shack back in Schwan Wu. With no time to lose, Hua spits Seven and Dai Bo through an underground tunnel that launches the duo straight into the city, where they stumble right into a cowardly street fight. Seven only needs to flash his Shadow Assassin VIP badge to make the gang wet their pants and bolt, leaving only their leader in the ring to be humiliated by a nutjob using martial arts techniques focused exclusively on the thumb. Since the building's elevator is busted and an obese Xiao Fei is too beat up to fly, our sedentary heroes are forced to shred their knees climbing the stairs to the penthouse. They manage to snag the dark paste, but are immediately pinned down by the local pet guards. Through pure plot armor, the magical thumb master, Ouyang Zhen, crashes the place and saves their skins, only to kill the mood by revealing his sole life goal is to slit Seven's throat for exterminating his former master. Playing the lone protector, Seven kicks his only friends to the curb, telling them to beat it so they don't get in the way of his suicide mission, and asks for directions to a giant eagle sculpture. Belting out a tune, Seven skips his way to the eagle statue to meet Green Phoenix, completely unaware that 13 is lurking in the brush, and during the worst mission ever imposed by her toxic master, plunge a dagger into our useless protagonist's chest, or be disowned for good. Trying to relive his emo phase, Seven decides to have an open-air fitting and dons his Shadow Assassin gear. It's the perfect opening for 13 to emerge from the shadows and stab the sucker with gusto.
Here's some healing paste.
She feeds him some BS about them having no chemistry and tries to make an exit to rehearse a tragic monologue, but regret sinks in, and she rushes back to try and shove a consoling pill down his throat. The problem? The deep blade sliced through Seven's flesh and was completely absorbed by his body. Out of nowhere, a suspicious red bead sprouts from the ground and pierces our unlucky barber's arm. 13 cuts the sphere on instinct, but the thing multiplies like bacteria and flies back to its owner, a creepy blind monk. The spiteful boomer reveals that the old Seven mercilessly slaughtered Schwan Wu's favorite mascot, and now he's going to pay the price. The blind old man starts spamming his magic beads, forcing 13 to betray her oath to protect her almost boyfriend. Frustrated by the double teaming, Seven completely loses his cool and activates beast mode. Purple smoke starts leaking from every pore, stunning the fleeing monk who decides to recalculate his life path and bail. Ripping his own vocal cords, Seven fires a thick pillar of light into the sky, literally handing his exact location on a silver platter to every high-tier assassin on the continent. Surrounded in the woods by a boy band of failed assassins, Seven spends his last drops of stamina trying to survive the massacre while his own identity crisis tries to tear his lungs out from the inside. Using the classic protagonist's invisible shield to skip the fight choreography, our bloody barber manages to crawl across the wet asphalt to a ruined shack. Agonizing with fever, he hallucinates a beach episode where he spends the afternoon using Xiao Fei's body as a volleyball, right before watching his friends disintegrate into barbecue ash in his own mind. He wakes up choking on a gulp of fresh blood just in time for a visit from a creepy, psychopathic fanboy who wastes his breath reciting Seven's entire Wikipedia page of legendary atrocities. Before the fanboy can ask for a stained autograph, 13 drops from the sky and banishes the extra to another dimension with a single flick, finally shoving the healing medicine into the Scissor master. Dressed in soaked rags, Seven weeps, saying the formatting of his memory drive is almost 100% complete, but he refuses to let go of his Chicken Island nostalgia. 13 then ruins the drama, confessing that the agonizing pain piercing his gut is entirely the fault of the frozen dagger she shoved into him earlier. Trying to hide her guilt, she makes small talk to distract him from his internal bleeding until he passes out. Seven pulls a cowardly vanishing act and bails to avoid putting a target on her back, all under the watchful eye of Green Phoenix, who's shocked to see the kid breaking the world record for surviving this level of poison. Crawling through the shadows toward an absurd statue, the poor guy barely catches his breath before being cornered by a madwoman who appears out of nowhere calling him her lover, proving that the worst punishment in the universe is not giving this clown 30 seconds of peace. Haunted by a hell of daddy issues and a toxic master calling her weak in her own mind, 13 wakes up in a cold sweat and follows the scent of accumulated chi until she finds Seven taking a beating from Shimon. Before she can crash the party, a psychopathic stalker named Manjasaka crawls out of the gutter, oozing chronic envy over the protagonist's attention. The crazy lady reveals she's already sent Seven's former lover to the grave, proving that if she can't have the Scissor Boy, no one will. To make the collective breakdown worse, a crow cosplayer named Blackbird lands in the arena, looking to devour the bounty prize, while Sheeman acts like a true cowardly capitalist and sinks into the earth to avoid splitting the profits. Facing death, Seven begs 13 to run, but she refuses to retreat solely because of a pending promise of a beach date. 13 summons her pet bird for an aerial rescue, but finds out the hard way that Blackbird has a flying license, courtesy of the Flying Bird sect, while 11 and the human lamppost Dachan waste screen time gossiping about the lore of two leaders from that same sect. Blackbird kicks the fleeing couple straight into the hard ground. Swallowing the trauma of her father's insults, 13 stands up with blood in her eyes. While 7 has bottled up flashbacks of the mysterious girl in white, 13 finally grabs hold of our barber's 1,000 demon daggers and uses the vibrating shard toy to mercilessly shred the black chicken. Completely ignoring medical logic, Blackbird realizes 13 tore his bird face apart using the fragments of the 1,000 demon daggers that 7 magically glued to the tip of her sword. The dark emo decides to grab the girl as a human shield, while Manjusaka watches from the sidelines, foaming with rage that 7 found new meat to protect. But our barber doesn't play around and slices the villain's wrist, forcing the poor guy to drop the hostage. In retaliation, Blackbird fires a purple laser from his chest, dragging 7's face across the rocks before tossing him into the air like trash. 7 responds by piercing the enemy's chest with his demon blade slash, scattering shards everywhere, but the malnourished crow doesn't even blink and swears he's immortal. A useless flashback shows a young Blackbird complaining to his master that he's possessed, only to be told he's going to become the zombie bird of darkness. Back in the forest, 7's blows don't even tickle until he notices the villain has the same lethal allergy to sunlight as a Discord server moderator. 7 flanks the idiot and forces him to look directly into a beam of light. Realizing his humiliation, Blackbird tears his own clothes to blindfold himself and attempt a demonic transformation, but 7 ruthlessly rips the cloth away and buries the sword deep in his chest. After whining in a flashback about how the White Birds massacred his faction to clean up the company's public image, Blackbird tries to crush 7 with smoke wings. However, 7's blade sucks the evil entity right out of his gut, leaving the withered, lifeless Blackbird to plummet from the sky. Finally realizing his own master authorized his death because nobody can stand edgelords, Manjusaka decides to play morgue makeup artist, draping a cloak over the corpse and fixing his face to look pretty in the coffin, before focusing her lethal insanity on 7. Bizarrely far away, Green Phoenix arrives at the assassin's base and casually drops a bombshell on the League leader. He traveled all that way specifically to assassinate him. Exuding pure audacity, Green Phoenix climbs an infinite staircase only to go head-to-head with a messenger demanding his overdue mission reports. Instead of handing over a doctor's note, the Shadow Lord cynically announces he's there to report an assassination plot against the big boss, only to draw his own blades and confirm with a laugh that he is the threat. He lunges, thirsty to pierce the master's flesh, but a servant with script speed jumps in front of the blow. A cat-and-mouse game ensues, with the extra dodging everything at light speed in the ridiculous hope of draining our green-haired Avenger's stamina. Tired of this dragged-out nonsense, Green Phoenix leaps toward the master and ejects an impenetrable energy barrier. The servant tries to follow, but slams into the invisible wall because her internal strength is simply too pathetic to get her into the VIP club. With the floor clear, Green Phoenix begins his wronged villain monologue. He forces the leader to remember the small green cloud kingdom, a place the boss invaded, obliterated, and looted without leaving change. The masked man throws it on the table. He's the disciple of the heroic guy who ripped the leader's arm off in the past, and he now possesses the intimate knowledge of how to exploit the boss's top secret weakness. Dumping a lifetime of childhood trauma, he vows to settle the score in the name of his master, his king, and every unsuspecting citizen, recalling the macabre night where his father was skewered like a kebab, and his mother became meat just trying to stop him from committing suicide by attacking the villain. Exhausted from listening to this funeral podcast, the big boss finally draws his own giant blade and charges, clearly intending to turn Green Phoenix into tuna pate. Nicola wakes up good as new in Stan after generously slathering herself with Daibo's healing ointment, who is already dragging the buffed-up chicken into a secret tunnel. Meanwhile, the preppy cyborg prince of Stan tries to act like a big shot abroad to secure another medicinal shipment, but is publicly humiliated when he fails to identify a bunch of boiled weeds in a teacup. Far away, our avian heroes pop out of a manhole in Schwan Wu like budget ninja turtles, falling right into vengeful Ouyang's sights. Using the local guards like a damn interactive human GPS, Daibo discovers that 7 was sniffing out the path to the eagle statue. At the same time, 13 is dancing like crazy to dodge Manjisaka's darts, as the psycho vomits a circle of toxic dust to snuff the lovebirds out for good. But before the psychopath can finish the job, Xiao Fei drops from the sky spinning his poison dragon drill, blowing the white powder away with the subtlety of a runaway industrial fan. Daibo tries to claw the villain's face off but takes a shower of needles and vanishes from existence. Seizing the opening, the chicken grabs our blacked-out protagonist, only to run smack into a colossal boulder. Shiman magically sprouts from the rock, punching poor Xiao Fei back to level 0 and preparing to mash 7's face. Fortunately, Ouyang enters the fray and pummels the earthen brute, giving Daibo time to tell the little chicken to suck it up and fly away. Shimen surfs on rocks like a schizophrenic to chase them, but Ouyang has the most brilliant and pathetic plan of all. The Thumb Master breaks the elite assassin's boot and proceeds to violently tickle his exposed foot, bringing the Chinese tank to the ground because he couldn't tank a laughing fit. Tired of this sausage party nonsense, Manjisaka simply bows her head and sniffs out the trail of 13's abandoned body for the final strike. We cut to the miserable routine of the ordinary assassin, who survives by working at a convenience store, while his zealous colleague Harukaze secretly steals meatballs from the stock. They gossip about 7 taking a blade to Red Tooth, until Karma collects the debt at light speed. Harukaze goes running with a stomachache to empty his large intestine after devouring the shady meat. Left completely alone on this shift from hell, the ordinary assassin gulps when a robber points an iron pipe at his face. The oppressed extra tries to ignite his inner energy to play the buff hero, but he's swept to the ground like trash and forced to cook instant noodles at gunpoint. As if robbing the register wasn't enough, the thug has a compulsive gacha addiction and demands all the store's scratch-off tickets. When the criminal scratches the tickets and realizes the gacha mechanics are a scam, his rage hits the limit. The ordinary assassin devises a Machiavellian plan involving stuffing the noodles with spicy sauce to choke the aggressor, but he trips over his own feet and spills the hot liquid all over the thug's clothes. Proving he has zero self-respect, the robber simply licks the sauce off his own pants and has the audacity to complain about the lack of ketchup. In a burst of suicidal courage, the clerk pulls the criminal's mask off to expose his ugly face to the security cameras, resulting in the thug blasting the entire ceiling to destroy the evidence. Magically remembering the motivational quotes of a deadbeat barber, the ordinary assassin blinds the villain with a tactical flashlight and tries to lock in a rear naked choke. Unfortunately, he takes a savage bite to the arm and decides to shove his fingers deep into the thug's nostrils to try and gain control. Thrown to the ground by the raw weight, our almost hero throws a bottle to kick the gun far away. At the perfect millisecond, Harukaze returns from his volcanic evacuation, grabs the fallen piece, and plays town sheriff, arresting the frustrated noodle taster. In the next morning, the heartless white fox wanders the alleys of Chicken Island looking like a completely lost middle-aged tourist, racking his brain to understand why the #1 killer would trade carnage for fade haircuts. He finds a random old-timer who promptly dials the protagonist's salon, allowing Daibo to pick up the call. But before the imposing assassin fox can drop his fatal monologue, the insufferable Uncle Chen starts screaming in his ear about the unacceptable 10 yen long-distance charge. Boiling with rage at being hounded like a bank debtor, White Fox charges a piercing laser in his finger to send the old man to hell. At the exact moment of the shot, Chen collapses to the ground, screaming in agonizing pain thanks to massive kidney stones. The villain's colossal energy hits the old man's back by pure accident, but ends up magically pulverizing the urological stones. Feeling immediate relief in his clogged plumbing, Uncle Chen declares to the heavens that the bloodthirsty killer is a miracle doctor, drawing a zoo of wrinkled seniors seniors begging for miraculous cures. Meanwhile, in Stan, a certified archmage apologizes for being too incompetent to cure the protagonist's 3 horse-sized toxins. Wasting no time, the Prince of Stan drags the real miracle doctor into the room, who acts like the big man on campus, promising to fix any carcass that's still blinking. Back at the market, White Fox throws Seven's photo at the miserable clerk duo and demands to use the phone again. Harukaze types the number smiling until his neurons connect the dots that this fancy customer is one of the 7 shadow assassins. The exact second the IV drip raises Seven from the dead, the first thing the stuttering simp does is whimper about 13's safety. The call connects in a panic, and White Fox spits out a classic ultimatum, vowing to shred every inhabitant of the island if the barber doesn't show up for a fight. Later, apparently jealous of Seven's laid-back coastal lifestyle, White Fox sits on the sand to enjoy the sun with the kids. Then, in a genuine burst of unprovoked hatred, he channels his massive aura and turns the Chicken Island vacation into an apocalyptic inferno of explosions. The puritanical chairman Zhang drags Redtooth's dead weight up a mountain like a pack mule to the Skylily sect. Her mind drifts 10 years into the past, to the time when the snaggle-toothed vampire still had hope of escaping the friend zone. He confesses his burning love but takes a colossal rejection because the local sect has an unbreakable rule of incel celibacy. His male pride wounded, he watches the ancient leader crown Zhang as her successor. While the new master absorbs the ultimate white lily technique, a gossiping student warns that Redtooth has finally gone Joker. The rejected simp drowned his sorrows by drinking the blood of his own colleagues and is now doing a cheap psychopathic Dracula cosplay, activating his homicidal rage upon remembering the rejection. The elderly master beats the crap out of the vampiric aberration and leaves the poor guy groaning in pain. Just as the old lady decides to erase him from existence, Jiang activates her savior complex and intercepts the blow. Ignoring the consequences like you ignore your credit card bills, she embraces the guilt and accepts the 10 heavenly punishments, taking a divine laser straight to the forehead that roasts her alive. Tired of the teenage drama, the master kicks the 2 cursed lovebirds out of the sect. Cutting back to the depressing reality, Jiang arrives at a dusty hall and stares at the portrait of the deceased leader in the totally abandoned facility. Consumed by unbearable guilt for the destruction of her own home, she vows to fix the radioactive dumpster fire that is Redtooth by plunging his carcass into the blood demon pool. We return to the same tragic soap opera as before via a director's cut, revealing how Redtooth became the official punching bag of the local kindergarten. After taking a painful beating from a pack of brats just for being in love with the successor, the humiliated boy goes whinging to the blood demon in search of power, only to end up possessed like a cheap puppet. Skipping the miserable memories and returning to the present, Redtooth wakes up bound in heavy chains within the blood pool, with Chairman Jiang holding his leash at the entrance of the damp cave. She reveals that she has activated the purification seal and plans to starve the demon out, forcing a strict diet without a single drop of blood on the menu. Obviously, the rebellious emo isn't keen on losing his dark superpowers and would much rather go hunt down Green Phoenix. He pulls at his restraints with raw strength and tries to snap at his former colleague, sparking a violent physical clash that feels more like aggressive couples therapy. Jiang cools him down by slamming the hot-headed maniac against the stone wall and wrapping him in even more metal. The sadistic vampire tries to get in her face anyway, but he's sent flying toward the ceiling after taking a solid kick to the ribs. She prepares her shimmering white blast from the past, but ironically misses on purpose, allowing the little vampire to scratch her hand. He immediately senses her hesitation and openly mocks the old woman, noting that her ultimate technique has always required her to press those tasty lips against a man's mouth. Before the dangerous chemistry can escalate, Jiang's phone starts ringing like crazy, warning that the sacred Chicken Island is about to witness the apocalypse.
Chairman Jiang, please come save us. A horrible person came to the island. No one can stop him.
The suit-wearing sociopath White Fox samples the cuisine at a random Chicken Island restaurant, praising the home-cooked seasoning while threatening to mince the owner if he tries to run, leaving the kitchen drowning in a sea of human ketchup. Elsewhere, our dim-witted protagonist is wallowing in grief over the destruction of his home, but Daibo screams in his ear to suck it up and stay down. Cola and the Prince of Stan set off to rescue the island, while the cats and dogs form a back-alley Justice League at the salon's doorstep. Mad Bark tries to fry the Sinister Fox's eardrums with a deafening guitar solo, but White Fox simply disintegrates the instrument mid-air with his powers before popping the limbs of a few fluffy pets like party balloons. The rest of the pet troop flees in terror, leaving the elderly leaders awaiting execution. Meanwhile, the divine physician tinkers with the protagonist's internal plumbing and locates 3 deadly toxins swimming freely in his veins. He identifies bizarre concoctions of love flowers and dark frost, but focuses on the gravest problem, drunken dream, the chemical drug that wiped the barber's precious memories. The vagabond master, Pure Yang, shows up smiling with a dinner bento, and everyone agrees to start a highly questionable rustic ritual. The first instruction forces Seven to strip naked in the middle of a forest in front of a bunch of grown men. Xiao Fei returns the cursed daggers, and Dai Bo finally admits out loud that he was a massive selfish jerk for exploiting his neurologically challenged friend just for profit. Following the tearful confession, the doctor plunges his acupuncture needles deep into the patient, and a roller coaster of murderous memories begins to batter Seven's sanity. Morning breaks, and our favorite suit-wearing sociopath, White Fox, wakes up on the protagonist's roof ready to commit some hate crimes. But before he can delete his first victim of the day, the Prince of Stan descends from the heavens in his flying sardine can, demanding justice for the island. The posh cyborg fires missiles and a ridiculous laser cannon that carves a monumental crater into the ground, swearing he's vaporized the villain. However, White Fox appears behind him like a ghost and shatters his armor with mere flicks of energy.
When you miss.
Just as the tech playboy is about to become scrap metal for recycling, Cola crashes the arena and simply calls for a timeout, as if they were playing tag at recess. Incredibly, the murderous monster agrees to the hydration break, and Cola hands the prince a power stone to recharge his garbage battery. That night, while the damn fox was munching on a snack at a local joint, the prince returns piloting a giant transformer. However, White Fox surgically obliterates every robotic part of the nerd, blasting even his bionic arm into outer space. About to finish the job, the villain freezes completely upon realizing Cola is sweetly clutching his hand. Unfortunately, the guy has no heart. He fires a cold-blooded beam at the girl, forcing the cyborg to sacrifice his last remaining stump of an arm to shield her from the massacre. As White Fox points his finger to finish Cola off, an incredibly long and sticky tongue whips his hand. It's Lizard, using his wet oral muscle to wrap up the fox and give the failed swordsman Ordinary Fang, Ichiro, a chance to leap in, firing his generic gun. Naturally, he misses every single shot, and White Fox pummels the invisible Lizard before burying the poor guy under an avalanche of rubble. Sensing the fear in the air, White Fox begins to humiliate Fang, slapping him across the face like a mother punishing a stubborn child at the mall, until the boy's blade snaps in disappointment. 2 furry girls attempt a disastrous group attack that goes nowhere, but Fang takes advantage of the chaos to land a colossal kick to the villain's face, only to be ground into pulp immediately after. Just as he's about to vaporize the entire daycare center once and for all, White Fox is interrupted by a beam of energy. Red Tooth miraculously rises from the ashes, thirsting for carnage. Ignoring the undead threat, the gingivitis vampire shreds the suited man's defensive magic like toilet paper and sinks his filthy claws wonderfully deep into White Fox's chest, marking the start of an ego-fueled brawl between 2 sick maniacs. Far from the island of useless extras, the loudest hate-fueled sword fight is going down between Green Phoenix and the leader of the Shadow Assassins. After getting shallowly sliced right off the bat, our green-clad edgelord sucks it up, has a motivational flashback of his old master amidst the flames, overcomes his cognitive flaw, and charges like a truck with no brakes at the boss. But just as his strike is about to impale the victim's guts, the leader's messenger steps in front like a premium meat shield, blocking the attack and piercing the hero's palm in exchange. While the villain and anti-hero trade petty insults about the shameful use of robots smuggled from Stan, the dying lackey projects a sneaky hologram revealing poor 13 sprawled on the ground. The psychopathic stalker Manjusaka has poisoned the girl, ensuring she has only 1 hour left on Earth before turning into snake puree. Pretending to be an absolutely cold and heartless guy, Green Phoenix minces the servant into glittery confetti, sets his sights on the leader, and bolts at the speed of light to play the lifesaver. Stumbling upon her on the way, the thirsty lunatic Manjusaka intercepts our leading man and snarls a disgusting proposal, offering the affectionate antidote in exchange for a cinematic kiss. Focused solely on his mantra of of celibacy, he spits a projectile in the crazy woman's face and hauls ass, unscathed. In a confusing narrative jump months later, Green Phoenix is dragging 13 through an abusive routine to teach her his supreme green feather technique. Seeing that the girl is obsessed with handling 2 curves at once and can't learn the magic, he sends his apprentice away and marches to fulfill his suicide contract at the Shadow HQ alone. After melting through hordes of nameless goons, our goth boy runs into Manjusaka again, swinging her unhealthy hips. But the real brawl starts when Stone Gate erupts from the floor, shattering the gravity field. In a chaotic ballet of pure aggression, Green Phoenix blasts a lethal beam into the woman's chest, but the spiteful girl manages to gloriously impale her sword into his pectoral before the green swordsman twists his blade and sinks it with total force into her tight abdomen, erasing his toxic ex-crush forever. Spitting Chinese tomato sauce, the suicidal hero collapses to his knees as the supreme leader approaches majestically, sharpened retribution in hand, ending the argument about easy, stupid choices and fatal miscalculations in a rotten world. While the world crumbles, the mystical con artist Master Pure Yang uses our memory-wiped protagonist as a guinea pig for a special mission. The target is a bizarre helmet-shaped fortress floating in the ocean to free a certain secret prisoner. With no budget for transport, Seven navigates to the high-tech hideout on the back of a humiliating rubber ducky, guided by knockoff VR goggles, while the cowardly Hua watches it all lounging on the sand holding a tablet, turning the rescue mission into a pathetic Twitch stream. Knocking on the armored front door, the electronic system stupidly asks for the intruder's age as a fixed password. Being a severe sufferer of acute dementia and chronic forgetfulness, the protagonist blanks. The old man plays the lottery, typing random numbers from afar, resulting in the AI punishing Seven with violent showers and lethal shocks to his nipples, until they hit the code by sheer divine intervention. Plummeting brutally into a sterile clinic, the idiot fries in a laser trap, burning through the floor toward the basement where he falls into a massive sliding tile puzzle. Toxic gas begins to flood the walls for a nice asphyxiation, but the sadistic parasite outside can't solve the grade school game on the screen. Slowly suffocating, the barber short circuits and goes beast mode. Smashing his own skull against the floor tiles, sinking a colossal level down and landing face first in the frozen cellars. Picking up a geometric instrument from the floor that looks like a dirty compass, he comes face to face with his own embalmed image before a hungry, ghostly wolf emerges to snack on his ribs. Stabbing the shadow hound with school supplies, the moron punctures the ceiling, emerges in an endless pit facing a smoke mirror, and reunites with the malignant phantom of himself carrying repressed rage. Spewing cheap goth lines about swallowing his dark past, the evil alter ego stabs Seven's vitals. Fearing a wipe at the final boss stage, Hua sucks up his own chakra to re-energize his device's internet antenna, shoving clean energy broadband into the infiltration slave's veins. Buff and sweaty like a gym mutant, the barber splits the demon in half, crossing the mirror with a macho attitude. However, as soon as he takes a victorious breath, he slips and wakes up in the beach mud, realizing that this whole mental ordeal was a damn Matrix file stealth downloaded into his mind. The quack divine physician warns that our amnesiac protagonist's body is clean of poison, but his brain remains a fatally formatted hard drive. To try and jumpstart that useless mind, the doctor tosses the 1,000 demon daggers back into Seven's hand. As soon as the loser strokes the hilt of his blade, he gets a hit of PTSD with explicit visions of carnage and drops the weapon, shivering like a chihuahua in the cold, while the medic warns that remembering the past could turn him back into a cold-blooded psychopath. Cola calls Seven, telling him they've finally taken down White Fox, and that he can finally go after 13. Suddenly, a foreign spaceship parks in the yard. The invaders scan the protagonist and the hobo Hua, classifying the duo as recyclable trash with zero energy, but they abduct the Archmage healer to perform bizarre experiments behind closed doors. Hearing the kid's desperation, the barber's killer instinct wakes up. He grabs his venereal sword, his eyes lighting up like lowrider headlights, and he slices the enemy ship before the aliens can even blink. Just as he's about to mince the guys for some human stroganoff, the cowardly hobo Hua reveals himself to be a closeted martial arts master and blocks the massacre by thrusting a dragon claw into the fray. The old man launches into a dull moral lecture about not slaughtering everyone, and just as he's about to crush the protagonist's bloodlust, Seven collapses from exhaustion. Waking up from the humiliating knockout, Seven discovers that his dark sword likes to suck the life force out of its wielder, so if he keeps swinging that tool incessantly, he'll kick the bucket. Hua tells him to head to the Schwan Wu kingdom to grind for answers and hands him a suspicious emergency sachet. The barber tries to sneak away, but the mobster chicken Daibo sticks to him like glue. The dynamic duo of idiots ends up at a municipal transport station, hitching a ride on a public flying sword toward the border. After a hell of an explosion completely reshapes the island's architecture through pure terror, a vulture reporter shows up to suck the ratings out of the locals' tragedy. She wants to know which alpha male flattened White Fox's face, but she only attracts lying sociopaths. A random man cries for compensation. Uncle Chen swears he used a lethal secret jutsu, and the effeminate hairdressers lie about defeating the villain with their scissors just to get engagement on the shop's Instagram. Finally, the journalist finds two girls who point to the true savior, Red Tooth, isolated on the beach playing the goth teen part. A flashback shoves the truth in our faces. During the 1v1, White Fox made the fatal mistake of taunting Red Tooth, demanding he unleash the blood demon within. The assassin accepts the macabre invitation and turns into a bizarre red monster, but the big fox realizes too late that he fell for the perfect bait because Red Tooth only triggered the beast's strength to shatter his own magical limiting seal. With his body finally free, he discards the demonic entity like a trash. Back in the present, the weight of Red Tooth's lethal gaze makes the news crew wet their pants and have heart attacks while running away. Zhang approaches the big monster and lets it all out, confessing that she loves the chaotic mess of that island of weirdos and refuses his offer to run away with him. Instead, she drops a heavy bombshell in the guy's lap, asking him to become her lackey and protect the place while she heals her own wounds. Reluctantly taking on the role of interim superintendent, the elite assassin begins patrolling the streets, exuding an aura of raw psychopathy that terrifies the citizens he's supposed to comfort. He ends up helping an old man with back pain, enduring boring stories with the world's biggest look of depression, and then runs into Jiang's bun shop, getting emotional just seeing the name.
She said it was some kind of play on words with open year round.
That's a terrible pun.
Our ragtag group of slackers, Seven, Daibo, and Xiaofei, is crammed into a sketchy piece of public transport that happens to be a colossal flying sword. Complaining about the freezing wind ruining his fragile chassis, the lazy barber begs a random monk to burn some mana and create a mystical windshield to warm the crowd. Soon after, he tries to play social butterfly with another grumpy passenger named Ouyang Zhen, only to be rewarded with a death threat. Turns out, the nutjob accuses Seven of using the praise finger martial arts style to impale his master in the past. Ignoring our protagonist's lack of a functioning brain, Ouyang escalates to lethal violence. The two engage in a completely reckless mid-air brawl, putting the lives of every law-abiding passenger on the line. The transport sword pulls a reckless bus driver move and slams the brakes at an empty station, leaving the two idiots dangling over the abyss. Naturally, they keep pummeling each other furiously, while the Buddhist monk meditates amidst the chaos, pretending there isn't a death match happening in his ear. In the middle of the clumsy scuffle, the amnesiac's body acts on pure reflex, grabbing Ouyang before he can kiss the floor of hell. This involuntary heroic act causes Ouyang's brain to short-circuit, finally triggering a memory of the brutal reality from 3 years ago. Ouyang finally realizes that the praise finger technique isn't meant for crushing skulls, but for defending the weak. Realizing the massive mistake he was about to make, he deactivates homicide mode, spouts some peace and love philosophy about his secret technique, and walks away. He promises to return for a proper ass-kicking once Seven fixes his neural synapses and recovers those damn missing memories. Lost in a forest with stomachs growling louder than a rusty engine, our slacker duo stumbles upon a crowded inn that is supposedly an ultra-secret intelligence hub. With nowhere else to crash, they share a table with a blind musician. Seven pulls out a hideous drawing to try and find the curves of his beloved, but a nosy waiter points to a wanted poster on the wall, revealing that the demure 13 is literally a criminal with a price on her head. The meatheads at the table get greedy for the fat bounty, assuming the barber is a ruthless hunter headed to Plum Blossom Manor to collect. Trying to play the diplomat and diffuse the tension, Seven offers to pour a drink, but ends up spiking the cup with the thick grime dripping from his own shoe. To top off the gross-out humiliation and ensure peace is never an option,
That tastes like shit!
The idiot accidentally mimics the tough guy face from the poster, causing the entire tavern to draw their weapons to slice him alive. Just when carnage seems certain, the blind musician clocks in. He pulls out his instrument and unleashes the 9-fingered mortal melody. Energy threads sprout from thin air, binding the aggressors in an involuntary bondage session. But the real damage is purely psychological. The heartbreak anthem forces the entire tavern to hallucinate about their youth and that one painful rejection. Everyone starts sobbing like babies, losing their will to fight and embracing pure depression. Taking advantage of the tough guys drowning in their own tears, the duo escapes with the miracle musician, who reveals that this devastating crying fit was just a cheesy romantic song Seven had commissioned earlier. To close this circus of horrors with a flourish, the kind blind man offers a ride in his high-displacement getaway vehicle, a lame geriatric turtle headed for the manor. Taking an agonizingly slow ride on the back of that turtle with a singer who destroys the eardrums of any living being, the duo finally reaches the foot of Plum Blossom Manor. The tone-deaf driver is absolutely sure Seven is climbing the mountain to meet the in-laws, which makes our barber shake in his boots. He grabs a pathetic fruit basket and disguises Daibo in a cage to try and buy the love of the bride's family. The moment he scratches the colossal gate with the subtlety of a tractor, the door swings open to reveal a bizarre scene. A hulking brute and a girl tied together like a package by a glowing tight rope. A flashback reveals that 5 days ago, this girl, 11, hired the human wall Dachan to be her bodyguard while she invaded her old home to retrieve an item. The problem? The family's elderly caretaker blocked their path, armed with nothing but a broom and absurd skills. When the brawl broke out, Dachan activated his legendary indestructible virgin body art, turning his body hard and golden to withstand any penetration and protect his client. The sadistic old man, however, quickly noticed the boy's virginity had a structural flaw. He struck him right in his unprotected temple and laid the duo flat. To seal the coffin, he tied them with the forgotten immortal rope, a nasty magical tool that not only drains life energy, but tightens the more the victim squirms. Back in the present, the protagonist's smooth brain processes that the bundled-up girl is his beloved sister. Terrified of becoming just another statistic at the hands of the overpowered caretaker, he tries to cut the rope, only to end up trapped as well. Time passes, and out of nowhere, a macabre, oppressive aura descends upon the courtyard, signaling that the true master of the house has arrived to take out the trash. Flashing back to the blood-soaked childhood of our favorite assassin, we see a young 13 begging for attention and stalking the formidable green phoenix through a snowy desert, desperate for a crumb of training. The elite master plays hard to get at first, but decides to spare a few minutes of his precious routine to teach her the art of piercing holes in solid rock using nothing but absurd chi control. He proves that staying calm and fluid like water is the secret to the perfect cut, but the angry girl prefers clumsy brute force, clashing against the rock and failing miserably. Soon after, when a squad of random goons emerges from the snow to slice her up, a fake green phoenix carves them all into a beautiful massacre, telling the brat to survive the hard way if she ever wants the honor of challenging his authority. Fast forward to the present. 13 finally sets foot in Plum Blossom Manor to face her neglectful family. What she didn't expect was to find the courtyard turned into a public humiliation, with Seven and his avian gang tied up and hanging from the ceiling like salami in a third-rate butcher shop. Her dear father, the living legend known as the Plum Blossom Swordsman, couldn't care less about his daughter's surprise visit. The bastard humiliates her by parrying all her lethal martial attacks using nothing but a damn twig he found in the garden, spitting in her face that 7 years of wandering the world weren't enough to lay a finger on him. With the sharp perception of a monster, he realizes the girl didn't swallow her pride to fight, but to beg for a massive favor, saving the lives of the idiots hanging above. Openly criticizing her cheap imitation of Green Phoenix's refined style, the old man throws down the final gauntlet. She needs to be woman enough to reproduce her master's ancient technique and drive her blade through a massive rock in the courtyard. Realizing that physical friction and desperation only guarantee failure, 13 recalls the protective warmth of the past. She focuses on the ignored lesson, drowns her mental frustrations to become calm as water, and channels all her chi into a single brutal flow to save Seven's skin. At the Shadow Killer headquarters, the Grand Master is foaming at the mouth over his failure to capture Green Phoenix. Desperate to lure his disciple, the leader orders his goons to spread fake news that her master is being held in Crocodile Valley. That's when 9, an arrogant rookie wrapped up like a low-budget mummy, volunteers for the mission, mocking 7 as a failed experiment before heading after the girl. Meanwhile, back at Plum Blossom Manor, 7 and his pet birds are tied up in a filthy dungeon after their break-in. A decrepit hunchbacked butler tries to assert dominance by refusing the protagonist's request to see 13. But the moment the old man turns his back, 7 uses his telekinetic scissors to snip his bindings. The problem? The old-timer returns and reveals himself to be none other than the handsome immortal Tyr, a bizarre master whose career was ruined when 7 escaped his sticky webs years ago. Focused on revenge, the bitter old man hangs the chicken Daibo over a stone monster and forces 7 to play a game of chain Russian roulette. If he cuts the wrong cable or touches the beast, it's game over. But instead of following the old man's rules, 7 realizes the enemy hasn't learned any new tricks. He simply focuses on penetrating the defense by cutting the chains controlling the trap. After leaving the butler humiliated and crying, the group flees and bumps into a 11 who warns them that 13 has already vanished. 7 promises to go after her. Down at the gates, Dachan tries to return the money for failing as 11's bodyguard, but she ends up blatantly flirting with him. Hiding under a restaurant table like a scared stray dog, 7 overhears 3 martial artists gossiping that Green Phoenix is being used as heavy bait to hook 13. By pure bad luck, a stiffed waiter recognizes the protagonist's face, sparking a generalized brawl that only ends when 7 launches a ridiculous musical distraction and flees with Daibo in tow. The dynamic duo ends up in a bizarre graveyard filled with wooden stakes driven into the ground, clashing with the eyeless sorcerer. Before the mobster chicken can warn him of the danger, the blind mage locks them both in an impenetrable magical barrier just to finish a boring conversation pending for 2 years. The seer forces 7 to relive his war traumas, revealing that the Schwan Wu kingdom forged him as the ultimate meat weapon against technological advancements. But the prodigy went rogue, and the leader decided to punish the boy by trapping his great love with a divine beast. The mage narrating with glee how 7 hacked the beast and a giant army of extras to pieces to save the maiden, only for said maiden to shove a poisoned dagger deep into his back. Claiming the woman was just a disposable pawn programmed to destroy him, the blind warlock tells 7 to embrace his teenage angst and seek revenge. But our hairstylist refuses the cliché script. He processes the info with his peanut-sized brain and realizes the poison in his back only caused amnesia, proving the girl intentionally erased his bloody past so he could start from zero, not to kill him. With his grim prophecies totally debunked by script logic, the sorcerer is speechless. Displaying a kindness that would make assassins sick, 7 invites the depressed mage to get a haircut and grab a snack on Chicken Island just to change his heavy vibe, hitting the road immediately after. Infiltrating the treacherous Black Rock Mountain, 13 slices through entire waves of low-tier winged goons to reach the summit, only to find Green Phoenix chained to a thick stone pillar. He is being heavily guarded by the assassins Manjusaka and Shimen. The moment the sadistic villainess threatens to disfigure 13's porcelain face, the protagonist's protective instincts kick in. He awakens out of nowhere, shattering the chains with a brutal burst of chi, just as the chickens arrive for backup.
We're really the strongest duo!
Now it's chicken-human duo.
Ugh, how ugly.
The reunion is immediately crushed by a surprise attack from Shimen, proving that 7's physical strikes are useless against the brute's ability to manipulate and harden the earth. To make the humiliation worse, the bandaged 9 joins the fray, mocking the protagonist with lightspeed attacks and laughing at his inability to use the legendary 1,000 demon daggers, while he tries to defend himself with scissor scraps. Beaten and face down in the dirt, 7 has a brilliant hallucination about puzzles, and finally understands he doesn't need to mimic the tactics of his past self to gain respect. Using his telekinesis, he grabs the dagger shards, but instead of assembling a boring sword, he fuses the pieces into the shape of colossal scissors, glowing and pulsing with pure energy. With his giant new toy activated, 7 steamrolls Blackbird without mercy, crushing the bandaged villain with a massive strike he didn't have time to process. But the poor man's victory is is always short-lived. Enraged by his partner's fall, Shimon fuses his body with the ground and transforms into a colossal stone titan. With his stamina completely drained by the mental acrobatics, 7 collapses. As the monster prepares to mash the team like bread dough, 13 jumps to the front lines, acting as a human shield. It's in this millisecond of despair that she finally realizes the absurd truth. Her beloved Master Green Phoenix arranged this collective suicide mission just to force her to overcome her own barriers and transcend through absolute panic.